Dissociation occurs for me when my BPD is either in a state of extreme high or extreme low. It is one of the 9 traits of having BPD, and I'm going to talk about what dissociation means to me, how I've coped with different types of dissociation, the impact of dissociation on my life, and the coping mechanisms I've learned to deal with my BPD through therapy to better control it. Sometimes I can be aware when the disassociation is happening in response to hearing something triggering from past events. Other times, when I have been in severe crisis or in a state of mania, I have no recollection of the dissociation happening. This is called dissociative amnesia. For me, dissociative states can last for any time between 1 hour and 48 hours, depending on my level of distress. It's not daydreaming as many people like to think of it as, and can be different each time. The first time I dissociated was in early childhood. I was sitting on the stairs at home and I couldn't shake this impending feeling that I wasn't a real person, and I felt extremely detached from myself and I had no real sense of the world around me. My parents asked me what's wrong, but I had no way of describing what was happening to me. I just kept saying, I don't feel real, nothing feels real. I just remember one of them hugging me and saying, you are real. Throughout my childhood, I dissociated, but most people passed it off as daydreaming, and it was only in my teen years when I went to CAMS they said I'd been experiencing dissociation as a result of my complex PTSD. When I was given a diagnosis of BPD in early adulthood, and heard that dissociation was one of the 9 traits, it gave me clarity as to why I was having these reoccurring episodes. Sometimes I can dissociate voluntarily in response to situations I find triggering. When I was part of TC42 in group therapy, I found it difficult to listen to people who had similar trauma to me or speak about my own feelings without dissociating as a way of coping with what I was hearing or saying. In therapy, I was actively encouraged to remain part of what was happening so that I didn't become reliant on using it as an unhelpful coping mechanism. It's unhelpful because it's an avoidant attitude towards addressing and being present with difficult feelings I was experiencing, and it's more beneficial to talk about them than it is to completely shut off from them. Because I have BPD, every emotion you could ever feel is amplified, so it makes sense that I use dissociation to cope with those difficult feelings, but it was a hindrance towards my recovery because I wasn't really looking at how to better diffuse those intense feelings for when I was in a dissociative state. That's why talking therapy helps. Sometimes disassociation can occur when I'm suffering a severe mental health crisis and I'm not aware of what is happening during the crisis. This is what some refer to as dissociative fugue. Imagine waking up and having no idea where you are or how you got there. That's what happened to me when I had a dissociative episode during a particularly bad crisis. I'd woke up in a hotel room and I had no idea where I was. I was fully clothed, but I didn't have a mobile phone, my passport, nothing except my bank card, which I usually kept in a wallet. I went downstairs and to the utter confusion of the staff, I asked, where am I? Newcastle, they said. I asked if I could borrow their phone as I didn't have mine, and I rang my girlfriend and told her I didn't understand why I was in Newcastle. She explained to me that I'd left the house and didn't tell anyone where I was going, and that she'd filed a missing person report on myself and I'd been missing for over 24 hours. I told her that I had no idea how I even got to Newcastle and that I would come home straight away. When I got home, the police were asking me questions, but I couldn't really answer them. I told them that I'd been having a mental health crisis and that's probably the reason for it. The important thing to them was that I was home and safe, and they left me to it. I saw the crisis team a few days later and they wrote that I had a dissociative episode brought on by my bad mental health. It's quite hard to describe how dissociation feels, but for me, it's like my mind is shutting down from the world around me. It feels as though I'm removed from my own body and mind and that I'm not real. This is what they call depersonalization. Certain things make dissociation worse, like looking in a mirror, because you see yourself, but you don't see you. It's usually accompanied for me with a feeling of complete emptiness. Because I have BPD, dissociation occurs more frequently when I'm alone as a response to another trait of BPD, which is fear of abandonment. For me, it can also occur because of other traits of BPD, such as self-harm and impulsive behaviour, either during or after the actions of these traits. It's sometimes hard for people to recognise that someone is dissociating, often because it looks like the person is daydreaming or not displaying any significant emotion to cause concern. One way you might recognise someone dissociating is blank expression, little to no response to repeated communication, and a lack of movement. This is why DBT grounding techniques are so important to get people out of dissociative states. For me, mindfulness is so important for when I feel like I'm about to go into dissociation, as it grounds your mind and body and helps you bring it back down to earth. Splashing my face with ice cold water is another great way of grounding your mind, as your body's attention will shift to the cold sensation and then you're less involved with that dissociative feeling. These are a few things I learned from group therapy, and it's important to remember that everyone's experience of dissociation and BPD is different, and not every coping mechanism necessarily works for all, nor does it all work all of the time. It's really hard living with dissociation as a result of my BPD, as it means I can lose a lot of time and then have to suffer the consequences of being late, missing important deadlines, and being actively present in the world and doing things that I usually love to do. I made this video because I want to spread awareness of how just one of the 9 traits of BPD affect me in my daily life, so that more people recognise what dissociation is and how to help someone that is struggling with it, and dispel predispositions that a person is just daydreaming or not interested in what is happening. Thanks for listening.